headlines. The top U.S. nuclear envoy discusses North Korea in Seoul, while the top nuclear envoys of China and Japan meet in Beijing. President Park Geun-hye calls for further innovation in the manufacturing sector, marking Korea's 51st Trade Day. And NASA is set to launch its new Orion spacecraft for a second try on Friday. Possible wind and rain could get in the way. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the program. Coming to you live from Seoul, I am Kang Tae-ri. Washington's top nuclear envoy Sung Kim is in Seoul for talks with his South Korean counterpart Hwang Joon-kook. Much of the talk is focused on North Korea and its nuclear program. This when we're hearing nuclear envoys of China and Japan also met in Beijing on this Friday. Our Lee Ji-yoon has more.
Washington is not lowering the bar for restarting nuclear talks. U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Policy Sung Kim says the fate of the stalled six-party talks depends on Pyongyang.
It would be a mistake for us to rush back to negotiations unless we can have some confidence that the North Koreans are ready to work with us in a sincere and serious manner towards complete verifiable denuclearization.
The former U.S. ambassador to South Korea met with his South Korean counterpart Hwang Joon-kook on Friday in Seoul. There, Kim said the U.S. wants to resume negotiations and that its diplomatic doors are open to North Korea, but that the North has refused to walk through them. The meeting between the nuclear envoys from Seoul and Washington follows a visit by North Korean Special Envoy Choi Ryong-hae to Russia last month. There, Choi reportedly said Pyongyang was ready to resume the talks on its nuclear program without preconditions. Next week, Kim will travel to Japan and China, both participants of the six-party talks, to discuss the North Korean issue once again. Lee Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
South Korea marks the 5th anniversary of the fatal sinking of the Cheonan warship next March. Now, this vessel, which was torpedoed by North Korea, was recently moved to a park to be displayed for educational purposes. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
Inside a park at the South Korean Navy 2nd Fleet headquarters south of Seoul now stands what remains of the Cheonan warship, which was torpedoed by North Korea nearly 5 years ago. A $6 million project has placed the 1,200-ton vessel here from a nearby dock to show the very appearance of the Cheonan, cut into two pieces after the attack on March 26, 2010, which claimed the lives of 46 South Korean sailors. Visitors can get a wider view of the area atop a 4-story high observatory and listen to the details of the tragedy before paying tribute to the sailors in front of a monument.
The exhibition will become a sign of protecting our country, where a will for a victorious fight will be imprinted in the officers, and people will be reminded about the value of security.
In a bid to turn the painful memory into an opportunity to educate people about security, officials plan to build an additional memorial hall next year.
I was heartbroken when we had to say goodbye to our children, but I'm thankful that the government has made efforts not to forget them.
Some 830,000 Koreans and foreigners have visited the Cheonan since it was displayed at the fleet's dock soon after the attack. Now, the story of the ill-fated vessel can be told to more visitors at its new home. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
South Korea is looking to heighten the level of its crackdown on illegal Chinese fishing boats in its waters. Officials from Korea's ruling party and government have reviewed plans to confiscate fish that are illegally caught and discard the Chinese fishing boats used to catch them. Also discussed was the possibility of boosting the budget and workforce of related authorities. This comes as hundreds of Chinese fishermen are arrested every year for illegally fishing in Korean waters. South Korea also plans to hold talks on this issue with China later this month. A college professor in Seoul was recently detained on charges of sexually assaulting dozens of his students over the years. There are also allegations that the head of the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra sexually harassed her employees. It's developments like these that have left the police no choice but to roll up their sleeves. Connie Lee has this next report.
It's being seen as a new push in the fight against sexual abuse here in Korea. The National Police Agency has announced that a special division will be set up next year solely dedicated to investigating sexual abuse allegations. The agency says it wants to reduce the number of cases here in the nation and strengthen investigations into victims' reports. This announcement comes amid a recent string of sexual abuse and harassment cases involving some high-profile men. Just this past Wednesday, a professor at Seoul National University was detained on charges of sexually harassing his intern. A professor at Korea University, another prestigious school, recently resigned after accusations he sexually abused a student. And a former prosecutor general is also under the spotlight for allegedly molesting a female employee at a country club. It's merely a small sample size, as many cases are believed to go unreported.
The victims this time were brave enough to stand up against these powerful men. The media attention on this is positive and hopefully signals a change in how Korea deals with sexual abuse, especially involving high-profile people.
The National Police Agency's latest plans shows its determination to combat sexual abuse. Earlier this year, the agency set up a special task force in well over 100 regions throughout Korea to investigate sexual abuse cases. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
The Korean economy heavily relies on exports, and the vast majority of those exports are manufactured goods. But with increasing global competition, President Park Geun-hye says the manufacturing sector needs innovation, and that's exactly where she will support. Our Hwang Ji has the details.
Despite the sluggish global economy, Korea is expected to post record numbers in trade surplus, exports, and trade volume this year. In fact, Korea has already breached the $1 trillion mark in annual trade for the fourth straight year. But what's more surprising is that it's not just the country's largest conglomerates that are leading the rise, it's also small and mid-sized companies. The pace of export growth among smaller firms is more than 3 times faster than that of large companies. While expressing gratitude to local exporters, President Park Geun-hye emphasized during a speech marking the nation's 51st trade day that they cannot simply rest on their laurels.
이를 위해서 수출의 근간인 제조업을 IT와 융합하는 제조업 혁신 3.0 전략을 적극 추진해서 산업 부문의 창조 경제를 구현해야 합니다.
To do this, President Park pledged to cut red tape, support startups in the manufacturing sector, and support research and development for new growth engines. Park added that the government will foster the growth of 400 companies so they can become global players with exports of more than $100 million a year by the year 2017.
수출 경험이 없는 기업들이 손쉽게 해외 시장의 문을 두드릴 수 있도록 전문 무역 상사를 통한 간접 수출을 지원하고 전자 상거래 수출을 활성화하겠습니다.
President Park also asked companies to actively utilize Korea's free trade deals with various countries. This year, Korea reached agreement on FTAs with China, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Hwang Ji, ARIRANG News.
While deflation worries are back in the headlines here in Korea, a survey shows that average Korean consumers are not necessarily feeling less pinch on their purse. The Korea Rural Economic Institute says that in a survey of more than 6,000 people, respondents perceived prices of everyday grocery items actually rose 14% on average this year compared to last year. This is the second consecutive year with 2-digit growth in perceived prices. Most patent battles between the world's top two tech giants have been dropped everywhere, that is, except for the U.S. Samsung says the almost $1 billion fine that it has been ordered to pay is too much and is asking an appeals court to reverse the decision. Shin Se-min tells us more.
Samsung Electronics wants a U.S. appeals court to throw out an earlier court's order that it pay Apple $930 million for infringing on iPhone patents when it made its Galaxy range of smart devices. Stressing the design and the look of the company's devices are different from iPhones, Samsung's lawyer, Caitlin Sullivan, said the damages award was excessive and unwarranted. Making the Korean company's case at the U.S. District Court in California on Thursday, Sullivan said the lower court was wrong to decide Apple's design patents were infringed upon because the Samsung devices do not carry an Apple logo, do not have a home button, and the speaker spots are in different places. She said it was absurd to make Samsung pay Apple its total profit for the Galaxy devices, likening it to giving back the entire profits on a car just because it infringed another automaker's cup holder. Apple's attorney, William Lee, dismissed Samsung's argument and said the $930 million award was fair. Reports say the three judges did not indicate when they would reach their decision. The massive award to Apple is the largest set in any of the so-called smartphone wars. The patent lawsuit between Apple and Samsung began back in 2007 and has rumbled on for years. Samsung and Apple agreed in the summer to drop their patent litigation outside of the U.S., though they have yet to settle their broader dispute. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
The Japanese yen has dropped to a new 7-year low, all the way down to the psychologically important 120 mark against the U.S. dollar. The yen tumbled to as low as 120.25 before pulling back a little to close at 119.78 in the U.S. session on Thursday. The Japanese currency has been on a downward spiral for months now, particularly since the Bank of Japan announced a new stimulus measures to boost the economy back in October. So far this year, the yen has fallen over 13% against the U.S. dollar. The yen also fell 0.7% against the euro on Thursday. Korea is a world leader when it comes to many internet-related figures, such as the number of users, average connectivity speed, and price. But in terms of web freedom, it's still lagging behind. Research by U.S.-based Freedom House ranked Korea 19th out of 60 countries in its 2013 Freedom on the Net report, categorizing the country's web freedom status as partly free. While it highlighted improvements like relaxed regulations on active election campaigning on the net, it criticized continued government censorship and a scandal that involved intelligence agents who went online to influence the 2012 presidential election. NASA's first spacecraft in more than a generation is preparing to launch into Earth's orbit on Friday. This after it was forced to postpone a test flight yesterday, just moments before takeoff. And to tell us more on the story and others, Paul E. is joining us from the News Center. Paul, what exactly went wrong yesterday, and what's the status on today's launch?
Well, many were looking forward to Thursday's launch of the Orion spacecraft, but ground controllers had initially delayed the launch due to strong winds, which was then followed by a series of equipment failures. But engineers at NASA say all systems are a go for today's historic flight, with liftoff in about T-minus 45 minutes. Our Kim Ji-yoon reports.
The launch of the Orion space capsule from Cape Canaveral in the U.S. state of Florida was called off just 4 minutes before scheduled takeoff due to technical problems. They were detected in the batteries of the rocket's camera and the valves of the shuttle's water supply. A spokesperson for NASA told AFP that it tried for several hours to fix the problems, but were unable to, forcing the launch to be postponed until Friday morning.
The launch of Orion is highly anticipated by the space community. It would mark the first time in more than 40 years that NASA has launched a craft designed to carry astronauts deep into space. Orion is planned to fly an altitude of 5,800 kilometers, circle the Earth's orbit 2 times in 4.5 hours, and land near waters of Baja California, west of Mexico. Through the test run, NASA will carry out a number of measurements that will be crucial in scheduling a manned spaceflight in the future. A crowd of 26,000 people gathered at the Kennedy Space Center to watch the Orion launch and left disappointed about the delay, but they will get another shot to see history again in the coming hours. Kim Jung, ARIRANG News.
And shifting now to the Middle East, an American hostage held by al-Qaeda's affiliate in Yemen says his life is in danger. This as the U.S. military says it tried and failed to rescue him last month. This militant group in Yemen has recently released a new video. What did they have to say?
Well, the leader of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula denounced what he calls American crimes against the Muslim world and has threatened to kill Luke Summers by the end of this week if their demands are not met. The 3-minute video posted on Thursday shows Summers pleading for his life and asking the U.S. government to save him. American and Yemeni special forces recently rescued 8 hostages during a raid in the southwest of the country. However, the Pentagon said Summers was not among those at the site.
My name is Luke Summers. It's now been well over a year since I was kidnapped in Sana'a. Basically, I'm looking for any help that can get me out of this situation. I'm certain that my life is in danger.
The 33-year-old photojournalist was kidnapped last September in the Yemeni capital, according to a U.S.-based monitoring agency. Hundreds of people have been kidnapped there over the past 15 years. However, nearly all of them have been released in return for concessions by the government.
And turning to South America, the UN Climate Change Conference is in full swing in Peru with the impact of rising global temperatures dominating discussions. And we touched on a new report yesterday, Paul, saying that 2014 is on track to become the hottest year on record. What are the effects of this trend?
Well, we may not feel the difference in our everyday lives yet, but this ever-rising pattern of global warming is believed to be behind a series of extreme weather events that are growing in both frequency and intensity. Talks at the United Nations Forum are now aimed at mitigating the consequences of this climate change, and that means sharply curbing greenhouse gas emissions. Our Hwang Joon-kook has more.
November 2013. Typhoon Haiyan slams into the Philippines, killing more than 6,000 people and turning the lives of millions of others upside down. Now, another super typhoon is bringing back memories of last year's nightmare. Typhoon Ruby is forecast to make landfall within the next 2 days. It's superstorms like Ruby that are sounding alarm bells worldwide about the effects of climate change. It is a major topic of conversation at UN climate negotiations in Peru.
When we were in Doha, it was Typhoon Bhopal. When we were in Warsaw, it was Typhoon Haiyan. And now that we are here in Lima, we are facing Typhoon Ruby, which is also a Category 4 super typhoon. We need you to get your acts together to meaningfully respond to the urgency of climate action.
Many experts agree that global warming intensifies extreme weather events. That's why the biggest major climate conference this year aims to set a long-term treaty to keep global temperatures from rising more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. It's part of the global push to reduce carbon emissions, with extra pressure being exerted on the world's 2 worst polluters, China and the United States. At the UN General Assembly Thursday, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon welcomed new pledges out of Beijing, Washington, and the EU, including Germany, to cut emissions.
Next year is an opportunity to take big steps, transformative steps in the right direction. We must do all it takes to provide hope for people and the planet.
Hwang Joon-kook, ARIRANG News.
And switching gears to the auto industry, the Toyota Motor Corporation has announced that it will call back 190,000 more cars to replace potentially defective airbags made by Takata. This comes as the auto parts maker has so far resisted a nationwide recall by a U.S. safety agency.
That's right. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration ordered Takata to expand its recall on driver's side airbags, which in some cases rupture, shooting out metal shards. But Takata says it won't comply until there's a comprehensive investigation. Executives from Takata and two other leading automakers were grilled by U.S. senators in Washington on Thursday over the safety concerns. Lawmakers criticized the Japanese company's response so far and accused them of being uncooperative.
And we have got to get out of this defensive crouch about liability litigation and get into an offensive position about making sure drivers are safe. And until your companies decide to do that, until NHTSA is a more able and aggressive partner in that, consumers are going to be in the dark.
Some 14 million vehicles of 10 different brands, including Ford, Honda, and Toyota, have been recalled worldwide, with the exploding airbags attributing to 5 deaths and about 140 injuries so far. Calling it an unprecedented crisis, Japan's regulator reportedly said it may need to change its recall system for an improved response.
And finally, in California, Paul, the Hollywood Walk of Fame has welcomed its latest star, and it's Pharrell Williams. This Grammy-winning, Oscar-nominated artist has won over fans and critics the world over. So now give us a little bit of a taste of his achievements.
Well, so far he's risen to become a hit singer-songwriter, rapper, record producer, fashion designer, you name it, he's done it. And now those decades worth of success is cemented in the streets of Los Angeles. The 41-year-old accepted his award on Thursday in front of the Hollywood Hotel along the industry's iconic boulevard. Williams, who was a teenage prodigy, thanked those who supported him during his humble beginnings from Virginia Beach.
I was once encouraged by, they call them teachers, but I call them the folks that conspired to get me here. My music teachers, and my grandmother, who figured that while I was using her soup spoons and her whisk and her pillows as a drum set, that maybe there might be something there. So she brought me my first snare drum, and that led me to my first teacher.
Williams first started his producing career as part of the Neptunes, which then helped him launch collaborations with other stars such as Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and Jay-Z. Thursday's award also fell on the same day Williams published an opinion piece in the New York Times in which he explained that happiness was a human right. Chetty?
A fame that started with his spoons and pillows. That's truly amazing. Thank you so much, Paul, for those stories, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
Happy Friday, I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your latest weather forecast. So today was the coldest day of the season yet, and heavy snowfall advisories have been issued for both the Jeollado provinces as well as Jeju, where snow is currently falling. And more snow is in store. The mountainous areas of Jeju are looking to get over 10 centimeters, while about 5 will fall along the western coast of Chungcheongnam-do province and Jeollanam-do province. Conditions will gradually clear up by tomorrow morning, and a cold wave watch as well as a dry weather watch have also been issued for Gangwon-do province, so if you're there, stay warm and hydrated. As for the weekend, skies are looking bright and clear despite the cold. However, those in Jeju could get about 5 millimeters of precipitation on Saturday. But the Sunday will be chilly and clear, so those of you planning outdoor activities should make sure to bundle up. Other than that, conditions will begin to ease up next week. On to Saturday's readings. Seoul dips to -9 in the morning before reaching 0 0 in the afternoon. Gwangju hits 6, Busan reaches 6, that is. Moving on to other regions, Jeju hits 7, Dokdo reaches 2, Mount Kumgang drops to -10. Hope you have a wonderful Friday evening. Stay warm. Here's a look at the international weather. And that wraps up this edition of ARIRANG News at 8. Thanks for watching.